Today we're here with a good friend of mine that I met at the Cigar Lounge, Robert Muller. Real estate, construction, kind of your background, 6 children. So we got a lot to talk about today.
Oh, for sure.
I'm very excited, and it's your first podcast, so this is going to be so much fun. So I think I would like to just jump kind of right into it. So we peel back the curtain a little bit here, everybody. We had a cigar before this and probably should have just recorded that entire conversation.
Exactly.
So now we're like, all right, what did we talk about again? So father of 6 kids, 3 boys and 3 girls. That's a lot. The last episode that I just recorded, we talked about how we each have 1 and that's plenty for us, and how we don't think we want any more. The age range of 24 to 14, that's intense.
It's intense.
Yes. So how did you always want a huge family, or did it just happen?
No, it's a great question. I mean, I remember when I was dating, I was at the age where 36 years old, I'm ready to get married, and been there, done that with dating and all that kind of a thing. And so I love kids, always wanted to have a family. And so when I met my wife to be, she's like, oh, I want to have a big family and want to have 12 kids. I was like, what'd she just say?
A lot of
kids.
work.
Exactly. But, I didn't think she was serious anyway. But at the end of the day, I'm not like some accountant, like, okay, I'm going to have 1.2 kids after 24 months, like any guy. So yeah, I'm open to kids, and whatever happens, we'll see what happens. And once you start having 1, 2, 3, you start going, oh my goodness, it's getting a lot,
Yeah. Yeah, you're one off from the most that I had. One of my friends has 7. He was on here.
Yeah, well, we lost one in pregnancy at 5 months, but so I guess you could say I had 7, but I started thinking, am I going to be on that TLC show, 18 Kids and Counting? Or I don't want to do that,
That's awesome. So what the challenges that presents, especially in terms of boys and girls, I'm always fascinated with how you steward and parent a boy as opposed to a girl, or a girl as opposed to a boy. I am very familiar with a girl, right? And I definitely think I parent her in a way to where it's boy and girl. She's in jujitsu. I roughhouse with her. We archery. She cleans dad's guns. Like, we do a little bit more of the stuff and she loves all that.
Cool.
And I don't baby her, which I think I look at my life and I'm like, man, if I had a boy, I really would have been really hard on him because it was hard on me, and I'm not going to baby you and like get up and go. And I parent Sloan that way. And I think it builds a mental resiliency in them. Like we were talking back 30 minutes ago, peeling back the curtain about how we need to steward and teach our children that just because somebody says something that they don't like, it's okay.
Right. 100%.
We live in a country that was built upon that. And it's how you internalize that.
Absolutely.
Is what matters. And people mispronounce the example is people mispronounce my last name all the time. It's spelled crap is. So how do you think people say it? They say crap is.
Right.
I could get mad at all of them or be like, that makes sense. That's how I would say it, and just move along with my day. I'm not going to take offense to something someone didn't mean to offend me with.
Right. 100%.
And so how did you teach your children that? Did you parent the boys and girls differently? Everybody's got to have their own personality.
Right, for sure.
So what did that look like in your house?
So I think you raised a really good point when you said, steward children, because I look at them as they're a gift really from God. Children are a gift from God. And so when they're little, I mean, everyone's kind of being treated in the same framework. You're teaching them right from wrong, and you're looking after them, you're protecting them. But as the personalities start to grow and as they get older, obviously the girls' needs and demands are different than the boys. Boys are roughhousing. And what you brought up is a really good point. I mean, I think that having a daughter and exposing her to all these different things is really neat. But it also comes, if you have a boy, what do you expose them to? If the kid wants to play with this thing or do this, or it's something that's out of the ordinary, do you stifle that, or do you fan into flame their creativity? And are you confident in that, like you said, each one's an individual, each kid's different. So I would say at a young age, everyone had the framework that I raised them with. But as they got older and the personalities, and if they were male or female, what are they gravitating towards? What do I have to look out for? as they get to puberty age, what the conversations you have, it's very different.
Yeah. Yeah. Was it, did you or your ex-wife have more like with the woman? Cause I'm going to have that conversation with Sloan, right. I'm not going to shy away from it. It is what it is. So how I'm interested, and I think there's listeners out there that'll be interested too, even though the age of a lot of what I talk about is Sloan's age. How did you approach that?
So you're talking about like puberty,
and how the things are gonna start happening, especially as a boy. Like you're gonna be sitting in class and you're gonna be like, "What is that?"
Right? It's crazy. I remember my mom telling me, I was like, "What?" And she'd be like, "No, you're healthy. Everything's good." But you're right. I remember my daughter, my oldest daughter, was addressing those issues, heard stuff from other kids or whatever, and so my wife's like, "You need to have a conversation with her." And we're on our way to a father-daughter dance. And she's asking me all these pressing questions. And I'm like, the birds and the bees, like, what do I talk about here? How do I say this in the right way? And listen, I think at the end of the day, I did it appropriately, but she was like shocked. Like, what do you mean? Like, you guys are together and this is, so it is challenging. It is different with girls. But you're going to be authentic. You're going to be truthful with them. Yeah. And you're not going to hold back, but it's going to be age appropriate. And I'm sure after speaking with you and spending time with you, you're going to do a great job.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, it's interesting too. Like my life coach talked about that because these were questions I had, like, after the divorce and like what I'm going through and like, how am I going to present these things? And like because as a man, you do tend to sometimes think about how do I prepare for everything?
Right.
Right. It's just kind of how our brains work.
Right.
And she was like, instead of thinking like that, create an open, communicative relationship with your daughter so that she brings things to you.
100%.
And I was like, God, that's so much easier. And it seems like the last 3 episodes, the theme has been simplicity.
Right.
And when you create that, she does it now. Like
it's natural.
Just natural, brings things to me and we talk about it. And it's no big deal. And Heather was like, my sons will ask me questions about crazy things. Like, what does deep throating mean?
Right.
She's like, we have a conversation about it because her words, she doesn't want them getting the information from Pornhub or getting the information from Susie at school.
Right.
100%. And so she's like, and all I did was create an open communicating relationship with my children.
I mean, that's a great point that you bring up. If I look back and you just turn the time back, even go back 100 years or so, that everything has changed so rapidly. It's changing even more every day. So the things that our kids are exposed to, I remember when my kids were little, we decided, hey, we're going to homeschool our kids.
Oh, I love that.
And people are like, that's not like what it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. You're almost ostracized for doing it.
Sure.
So we didn't have all this pressure. And there's a big homeschool community in Boca Raton, but we decided to do that. And people are like, aren't you worried? Like, your kids, how are you going to socialize your kids? So I started thinking about that. Like, what do you mean socialize? Like, if you're telling me, do I want my kids to be like society is being? There's many things I don't.
And I think I want to go run the other direction.
Exactly, 100%. So from that standpoint, but there's so many other activities that kids do. And today they're exposed to so many things. And like you just said, those conversations are going to come up. But have you created an environment where your daughter feels comfortable? I can tell my dad anything. My son, I can tell my dad anything. And that's what we really want to foster. We want to foster in our kids that we're approachable and that we'll listen to them. And you're not going to shock me. There's nothing you can say that's going to shock me.
Right.
I'm a safe place. You can talk to me and I may not have the answer, but I'm going to help you figure it out.
Yeah. So in getting there, I have experienced this. So I'm wondering if you have. I didn't feel that way with my father growing up.
Right.
So it wasn't modeled. So there are times where I have to have like a checks and balances system in place where I think you would call it repair, right? Where it's like, didn't act the way I wanted to in that situation, Sloan. Let's go back, rehab that conversation and show you that this is a safe place and dad goofed up. So how did you build a lot of the communication?
So that's a great question. I remember a friend of mine had 8 children here in Boca. And they were such a great couple, him and his wife. And I'm like, wow, this guy, I need him as a mentor in my life. So at different times, I would go to his house and my son was being stubborn. And I believed in, you know what, I'm going to discipline my kids, but not with a lot of emotion. If a kid, you tell them, don't touch that stove, it's hot, and they touch it, the stove's not screaming and yelling. They touch it and go, ow, I just burned my hand. Well, you learned don't touch the stove when it's red, right? So when I would discipline my kids and say, here's the boundaries, here's the thing. And if they did something, I would spank them or I would discipline them. And, but I would do it unemotional. I wouldn't be all freaked out and flipped out about it.
Okay.
So I can remember I grew up with a dad that was a general, that he was in the military. He was a general. And so I go on a military bases. Everyone's jumping to attention. And oh, my goodness, I love that in one side. But he's a very loving guy. But we still didn't have the relationship like you're talking about. Like, I was just going to talk to my dad about anything. My mom was more that person in my life.
Same. Yeah, I had that.
Yeah. And then just raising the kids. I remember I used to train dogs as a hobby and then did it as a business kind of going through school. And I trained a lot of the police dogs and that kind of stuff. And so I told my friend with the 8 kids, I go, listen, it's probably from training the dogs or whatever. I never yell at my kids. He's like, oh my good. Wow.
Yeah.
I wish I could say that. Like, that's not me.
Yeah.
And then I'm thinking like, what an idiot to say that, because at that time I hadn't. But as time and life goes on, I'm driving down the road one day. I have all this stress on me. The kids were in the car. Someone's calling on a business call. I'm like, I put the phone on mute. Would you please shut up? Be quiet. I'm screaming, right? And everyone just goes dead silent in the car. I'm thinking, I thought about that later and going, what an idiot. Like, I never yell at my kids. Well, there's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, you stress out. And then I had to go back and I had to apologize. And you want to be authentic with the kids. I mean, what do I want my kids? You're never not going to screw up in life, right? We're all make mistakes.
Right.
So how do you handle that? And then living it out in front of them. Hey, guys, I need to talk to you. I want to apologize for the way I acted today. It's not right. It wasn't good. And humble yourself.
Yeah. Well, and I think the humbling yourself is the repairing and then the humbling yourself we're always told to be humble.
Right.
And nobody shows us how to be humble. So how do we create a humble child if we don't show them how to be humble?
Absolutely.
Right. And so looking at the story you just told and expressing that, I think it's an amazing way to show children how to humble yourself on, like, Dad was wrong. Dad made a mistake. Now, just simply saying Dad was wrong or Dad made a mistake, to me, is not enough. It's then, what are your actions going to be behind that?
Right. 100%. It makes me think about, I would tell my kids, like, you need to apologize. You need to say you're sorry. And then I would think about that. Like, there's times that there's authority figures in their life that maybe that person is out of line. So am I now teaching my child, well, go apologize, go humble yourself, and maybe it's not appropriate at all.
Yeah.
And there's also like a false humility, right? Yeah. So there's a difference. And I think that if we're authentic and we do apologize, it goes one step further. Now I've apologized, but the person's still hurt. What are my actions like? How do I move forward from that? So there's a word in the Bible that calls repent. And repent means to turn around. It means to go 180 degrees in the opposite direction. So if I've offended you by doing something, am I repentant of that? Am I taking a completely different avenue next time and going in a different direction? Or am I doing it hey, I'm sorry. Do you forgive me? Hey, I'm sorry. Do you forgive me?
Right,
and then it becomes a model where it really means nothing.
Yeah. Boy who cried wolf.
Yeah,
all
exactly.
over again.
100%.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it too. And again, modeling, I think we had talked about before, words don't mean as much to children as actions.
100%.
And they observe everything we do. And that's the jumping off point of how I think we should parent. Look in the mirror.
Right. So there was a saying that was said one time, and I have a faith in God, and so people say, you know what, share your faith everywhere you go. Tell everybody, share your faith. Everywhere you go, you should share your faith. But this guy said, share your faith everywhere you go, but use words if necessary.
Oh, see, so I like that.
Think about that. Are you living a life? I don't have to tell my kids, man, I love you. I don't have to tell my kids, I'll stand in front of a bullet for you. I don't have to tell my kids, I'll sacrifice for you. Do they see it every day, lived in and lived out? And I'm not talking about the snapshot. I'm not talking about the time you screw up. What's the movie? Yeah. I could take the snapshot from my life, from your life, from anybody's life, and we could say, that doesn't look good. You tell me that's a good father, a godly man?
Sure.
It's not. Well, what's the movie?
Right.
That's not what he's doing day in and day out. That's a snapshot. The movie is he's consistently trying to live this life.
Right.
He's trying to model it, and he's doing it not perfectly, but he's doing it consistently.
And consistently, again, that comes back to like the principles of like just failing forward.
Right.
If you don't go for it and you don't try, you don't get the course correct. And if you don't course correct, you don't get better.
Right, 100%.
And that's where I think we are in a stagnant place in society right now, where people have no desire to get better
right.
at anything anymore.
Right. Well, we've raised, unfortunately, through media, through a lot of different things, through the breakup of the family, we've raised a bunch of entitled kids. Everybody has this, what I call the lotto mentality.
Okay.
They want to hit it. They, like I should be an influencer. I should hit lotto. I mean, isn't everybody making millions of dollars, and not doing anything?
Right.
So that's what I want. So when you start playing that into your kids and hey, you played football, you played basketball. Well, you know what? Everybody gets a trophy. So we go up there and like, well, no, you don't get a trophy. You didn't win.
Yeah.
And it's okay not getting a trophy, and it's okay losing.
Yes.
How do you lose? And if you're learning from those things, maybe I need to be practicing more. Maybe I need to be training more.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to learn more about the game. So,
and I think in that, not only that, but you also find what really drives you and fuels you.
100%.
Because my parents had forced me to do piano for a while, and I used to hide in a tree because I didn't want to play piano.
Right.
I thought I was gay, and I didn't want to be gay. To be
Right.
perfectly honest, peel back the curtain. That's why I didn't want to play piano.
Right.
Now I'm like, damn, chicks would have really liked it if I knew how to play.
And
the
you're not
fucking piano.
Liberace.
Yeah, right. And I'm not Liberace, So, but I didn't want to play the piano. But then my parents got me in the woods, and I got obsessed with hunting. And it was like, so if I failed at the piano because I didn't want to be doing it, I was like, ugh. But if I failed at football or hunting or lost a track race, I was like, oh, but now I want to do more. I want to figure out how to get better at this because I had a passion and a purpose for that thing.
It's so interesting what you say. I mean, I don't even know how the correlation, but it made me think of something else in my life. Recently I started an Instagram account for my weight loss and health journey or whatever.
Yep.
So, thankfully I'm down, 85 pounds now. I got probably another 60 to go. But I remember I would always blame my mom. I go, Mom, you're the reason why I'm overweight. She's like, what? What do you mean? And I go, you tell me when I come home from school, you're not going out and playing until you eat everything on your plate. So I'm like, I want to go play. So I woof it down so fast. If she would have told me, you're starting your homework the minute you finish that food, I would have slowed way down.
Guy on the planet, right?
I would have slowed way down. So I blame her. But, it's interesting. Yeah.
It is. And I think that that entitled nature comes from not losing.
Right.
Because it's like, what is happening?
Right.
Like, there's no checks and balance system anymore.
No, there's no, and making mistakes and not playing as hard or not being as good. Everybody gets the paycheck. We all win.
And it's becoming normalized.
It's normalized.
And you even see it in professional sports. I remember watching the 2000 Steelers. And so the Steelers and the Ravens in the 2000s, especially 2005 to 2010, we'll never see football games like that ever again on the planet. Right? You never saw a single person take any time off, not play at 100%, not block, not do and it's okay to do those things. Like people do those things now and it's like, oh, the guy didn't block for the running back because that just happened. And then he course corrected.
Right.
And I think we should acknowledge that. I've talked to my friends about it. I'm like, hey, he course corrected and blocked like crazy the next game.
Right.
Let's give him his flowers on that. It was awesome.
Right.
But you didn't even have that back then.
Right.
It was you go 100% at everything. You give everything. You do everything to the fullest capacity that you can give.
Right.
And that's what I hope to teach Sloan is if you're going to choose to embark on something, give it everything you have. If we're going to do piano for a week, give it everything you have for that week.
100%.
And then you create a child and a being that is so secure in who they are that they're not offended by how you live life. How you choose to live life should never make me feel offended in any way.
Well, and they're also secure in who they are because they've experienced all these different things.
Failure. You're secure in who you are because you've experienced failure.
Exactly.
Yes.
And it's okay to fail.
Yeah.
And
we need to normalize it almost, but yeah.
Yeah. And also you're not alone. You've got a relationship with your dad, with friends. I always tell my kids, you're never going to make it through this life by yourself. You can't do it on your own.
Right.
But God brings people around you to support you. And there's so many more people that are there to support you than you'll ever know if you just open up to that. But I want to give my kids a passion. At the end of the day, I want them to be passionate. So, my kids, I don't like school. Okay, you don't like school. So what is it about school you don't like? Well, I don't like this teacher. But what is it about the teacher you don't like? And then try to teach them, well, they teach it this way or they do this, or this is not about Burger King, have it your way. Yeah. There's things in life that you're going to have to go through that you don't like, that are uncomfortable. And guess what? Welcome to the world.
Yeah.
I do it. And I think we really miss the mark when we tell our kids, and I've said it myself, I've heard people say it, find a job you love and you'll never work a day in your life. Like,
I love my job and I work every fucking day.
But think about that. Well, that's another issue for me. Yeah. That could be why I got divorced. I love work too much. But it's true. But you think about that. So there's going to be some things, it's work, it's hard, and it may not be enjoyable.
God, but it's gratifying when you do it.
It is gratifying because I think our creators designed us like that. So I try to teach my kids, I want you to have a passion for whatever it is you have a passion for, but let's fan into flame that passion and get a hunger. You may not like school, but I want you to be a lifelong learner.
Yeah.
I want you to have a hunger to learn. Like, what book have you read that really impacted you? What are you doing now? Those are the things. And I can tell you now, there's many a times at night I get up, I can't fall back to sleep. I'm reading, I'm looking at something, I'm training myself. I want to be a lifelong learner. And I think it's exciting and it's a great place to be.
I just started reading a book called Mastery.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever read it.
Nope.
I highly recommend it.
Okay, I'll write it down.
I am not very far into it. It came recommended to me by somebody who I respect, and they're like, you're going to love this book, and they were not wrong. But he talks about how the brain is literally designed. The second you get to a place in your profession, career, whatever, where you're like, I got it. I understand how to do it. I don't need to advance anymore. The brain immediately starts going the other direction.
Wow.
And this is why we don't create masters anymore, because we don't create lifelong learners, lifelong students, lifelong people who just want to be so amazing at something.
Right.
And so that's how you keep the mind sharp, is you don't stop. This is why people like Joe Paterno is a great example. He said, the day I stop coaching, I'm going to die. That's why I'm not coaching.
Right.
He died.
Right. 100%. Right.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, because if you look, my favorite example of that is Pete Carroll, the coach of the Seattle Seahawks, or ex-coach, I guess, at this point. I think he's 72 or 74 years old. And people are saying he still goes out and runs routes with the wide receivers. I mean, to be the head coach of a football team is so demanding on you mentally, where you have to push. And when Pete Carroll started coaching, that's not how they play football now. How much stuff did he have to learn to change, right?
100%.
And if he just got stuck in the way of the coach, the refs are out to get us. No, he took responsibility to change the team, change himself, and grow. And look what he's done. It's amazing. He looks like he's 50.
Yeah, it's cool. It's really cool.
So
I was thinking about when you said that too, it made me think of like, what are we teaching our kids and telling our kids? Like, so what is it you want to, like, remember when the children were little, what do you want to do, Johnny, when you grow up? You want to be a policeman, you want to be a fireman, you want to be an astronaut. You could be anything you want to be. Well, you might have the opportunity to be anything you want to be, but you may not be suited for that job.
Sure.
So that could be a false misnomer to begin with. But also, I think so many kids today, everything is wrapped around money. Everything we see, it's all wrapped around money. So
consume.
Right.
Yeah.
So if I'm not like I hear my college age son's friends tell me, well, I transferred into this and out of that because, you can't make real money. I have to make way more money than that. So that's my motivation. So I think that examining that and teaching our kids, have a hunger for learning, be passionate. And it's not all about money. I remember the first half of my life as a young guy, I got caught up in it. Buy, acquire, build, get the boats, get the car, build the house. And then the second half of your life, you're like, sell, get rid of, simplify, right?
Yeah.
And you realize, to me, that, meeting you, Rocco, is way more important to me than, I just did another real estate deal or I got another construction job. Okay, well, it's important. But what about the relationship? What's going to come out of that? So I'm not trying to, minimize the importance of working, making money, but at the same time,
but I believe at the same time, in if you, like, if we peel back that quote, like, find something you love and you'll never work a day in your life, you can eventually turn whatever that passion is into an income.
100%.
And it can be amazing. And there are no limits to that.
Right.
That's the beauty of where we're at now. Like, if we sink into the opportunity of where we're at, Sloan told me the other day, she's like, boy, Dad, I just don't know what I want to do when I grow up. There's so many cool things. And I'm like, well, that's cool. Awesome, babe. You know, like, what are those cool things? And she routed off like 6 or 7 things. She goes, maybe I'll do them all. I'm like, maybe you will.
Yeah.
Maybe you will. How many people have changed careers at 55?
Yeah. How awesome is that?
Like, just pivoted, did a 180, and are like, boom, I'm doing this thing, and I love it just as much as I love that.
Right.
One of my good friends, he was a administrator of a high school, retired, got his retirement, did all that stuff, went back to chiropractic school.
Amazing.
It's chapter 2, baby.
Amazing.
Let's ride.
Exactly.
Like,
amazing.
how cool.
It is awesome. Yeah. I think of my oldest daughter, it's so funny because she's now 24 years old. So most of her friends are now all graduated, whatever. And she took the path of being involved in real estate and did some college, and she's like, oh, I think I missed the boat. I didn't go to college like these other kids. And I kind of regret that. I'm like, you missed the boat. Like, I'm 62 years old. Like, we're just hitting our stride. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
There's so much opportunity. And like you said, today with all the different venues and the different things out there, you can pick up something at any time and completely change the whole direction of your life.
Yeah. To me, it's amazing. And when people are like, oh, it should be the old way or whatever. But if you take the old principles and apply them to today, it's amazing.
It's unbelievable. How old's Sloan now?
Sloan's 6.
6.
Yeah. So we're growing.
You have one, right?
I have one. Just one. And, another thing I think we should talk about is, because we kind of bonded over this, was being a gentleman. Teaching your children that.
100%.
What that looks like, how to be treated. Like,
wow.
Then your oldest daughter, any of your children, are they dating?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Pleased with who they're dating?
I am. I think that as a dad, nobody's good enough.
Of course.
And you just want, what do you want? You want the main things being the main thing.
To be a gentleman.
You want him to be a gentleman. So character matters. Character is king, probably.
Yeah.
What's the character of somebody? And it's not like everyone says, oh, make sure your daughter dates someone who's successful be making money. And okay, that's fine and that's good, but not substituting character for that. So that's the number one thing. And am I modeling that? Am I getting the door for them when they get out of the car, when they go to the movie theater? Am I telling my boys to do that? And sometimes I am, sometimes I'm not. I'm guilty of not always doing it.
Yeah.
And I think that, as you told me what you're doing with your daughter, it's phenomenal because you don't need to say a thing. When it comes time for her to date and whatever that you think is a good age that you could do that, she's going to have a great model she saw. How is she talked to? How is she respected? Is he a gentleman? Is he opening the doors? Is he doing the things that my dad does?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a phenomenal point.
Well, another thing we talked about in terms of that character and setting the standard for what your daughter's going to accept, we talked about, like, my ex-wife and how a lot of people hold so much resentment. And it's even if your ex-wife, I'm speaking is the father, the man, even if she resents you and hates you, it doesn't mean you have to choose that to reciprocate.
100%.
Because my job was, and she doesn't hate me. Everybody that listens to this podcast knows we have an amazing relationship. But my job was if I proceeded to embark upon a hatred, anger, resentment, all of these things journey, what was I going to model for Sloan about how you treat her mother?
Great point.
And it's like, that's not okay.
Right.
And so sometimes having that little external human being to change your behavior is a great thing.
It is. I think that the kids see everything, right? So, having good conversations, and the default mode for me is I always want to be my kid's friend, right? I want to be their friend. I want my dad's my best friend. But really there's times where you have to be a dad and not a friend. Mm. And so they can't be as transparent and authentic as you want to be. there's things that are age appropriate they shouldn't even be part of.
Yeah.
So you got to be wise about how you handle that, the conversations they hear. Can they hear those conversations?
You're talking about like wife or ex-wife.
Yes.
Like if you're communicating.
Well, that's a great point. I think either one.
Okay. Yeah.
But for me, my ex-wife.
Sure.
And look, we had challenges or we would still be married.
Of course.
But at the end of the day, it's not so much what she did or what she didn't do or what my responsibility is. What did I do? What is God showing me to change in my life? And there's challenges and there's friction for a reason. So instead of me pointing the finger out at her and seeing her, I'm okay with it. There's worse things than divorce.
Yeah.
How do you handle the divorce, right? And at the end of the day, being civil, being kind to one another, modeling that for your kids, to me, is paramount. Put everything else aside. If you're not going to do it for yourself, do it for your children.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
And then that makes me think of one other thing, not doing it for yourself. The number one thing you can do, and my focus has been wrong for so long, going back to that weight loss journey. It's always like I would always do things for other people, quicker than I would do them for myself.
Yeah.
So I used to be an athlete, power lifter, gained a lot of weight, it was easier, married. So that's off the realm. Not going to be out running around looking for a girlfriend. So you just get comfortable and the weight comes on. And I just got sick and tired of people saying, you should have seen your dad? Like back in the day, you should have seen your dad. It's like, what do you mean back? And I realized no, you take a picture and look at yourself and rightly assess it. I'm like, I don't want to be that guy anymore.
Yeah.
So what's the number one thing I could do for my kids? Well, take care of yourself.
Yeah.
They would say it, they would communicate it, but for whatever reason, it didn't click in my mind, right? So I said, you know what, when change will come is when you're sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Yeah.
And you know what? I yo-yo dieted, I did all these different things. And I said to myself, you know what? There's one thing I can do. It's real simple. Just stop eating. Like, what do you mean? I just stop eating.
Yeah.
And now that's the big craze today is like fasting. Joe Rogan's like, I did a 72-hour fast.
Yeah.
And I'm like, buddy, I did a 10-day fast. But guess what? The hunger goes away after the first day or two.
Yep.
You're not hungry anymore. And for me, I had a lot of extra storage in the kitchen pantry here on the body that could use it for fuel.
Yeah.
So I wasn't worried about losing muscle or that kind of a thing. And so it's worked. And I really said at this point in time in my life, I got to take myself and be number one, because really that is the highest good and the greatest thing I can do for my kids.
Sure.
And a lot of times we substitute the good for the great. Like we'll take something that's really good and we go, I'm going to go do that. But it's not the greatest thing you should be doing.
Wow.
So evaluating you taking care of yourself, and it sounds like you've had a great journey, what God's shown you in your life and all the growth you've had.
Yeah.
And you're applying it to your daughter, which is phenomenal. And it's going to pay huge dividends.
I truly believe that.
It will pay huge dividends.
I truly believe that.
You're planting seeds, right? It's our job to be planters of seed. We plant seed. Mm-hmm. We can't make them grow. Right. We can't increase the crop. Right. God does that. Yeah. But it's really cool when you start to see those things pop out of the ground. Yeah. And you think, wow, this is phenomenal, Well,
it's so interesting because I see them now, even with her.
Yeah.
Like I'll get messages from other parents or this or that. And it makes you feel amazing.
Oh, it's amazing.
And it's the best. And, I think so the fitness journey and taking care of yourself, it is something my daughter was pretty easy to make a priority.
Right.
For my whole life.
Right.
And boy, that threw a wrench in it. And for the last, year and a half, or more, I've gone through spurts where I wasn't consistent, and I was, and then I wasn't, then I was. And it's so easy for me to put that part on the back burner
100%
when something else needs done. But I find that when I am in the mental capacity and building that resiliency of, no, this is priority, and I do that, it's actually then easier to stay there too. Yeah. It's a conundrum, but it's hard. It
is hard. And I think that, a lot of people, a lot of kids, even my dad being a general, he wasn't over strict in the standpoint of, hey, you're going to be up at 0600, 0615, you're going to brush your teeth. It wasn't like that. So I didn't grow up with that pressure on me.
Oh, that's nice.
So guess what? and my mom cooked meals and cleaned the house, and we had a maid or whatever. So, I'll throw my clothes down. You get comfortable, you get lazy. And, so yeah, I just think that I lost my train of thought. Right
That's
there.
okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
No, but I just think that it's true. Like, what are you modeling? What are you showing your kids? And if you didn't grow up that way, it's easy to get distracted. Like, oh, my daughter needs to go here. My son needs to go to this thing. Oh, well, that's a priority. Your kids are your priority. Well, did you work out today? Did you still take care of yourself?
Right.
You might get away with it for a day, a month, a year. How long can you get away with it neglecting yourself? And I'm speaking to me, not to you. I mean, that was my life.
That's how it all works, though.
100%.
Yeah.
And then you're on Facebook, you're on social media, and this person passes, that person passes, and you realize and you think about your own mortality. Like, I don't want to be morbid or sad or depressed.
Yeah.
But hey, how long do you have to live?
Yeah.
And how do you want to live it? And so there's times you need to get alone, get quiet, and really start to write down what the priorities are. And when you see those priorities, guess what? None of those things happen if you're not in them.
Yeah. That's true. That's a really good point.
Yeah.
And I think that if we are honest about our priorities and we take the consumer mentality out of it, it gets to be a very small list.
Totally.
And then again, I want to break things down to the simplest component, and then that small list becomes easy. And all the other stuff, whatever. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
Exactly. That's a great point.
It makes sense to me.
Right.
And I like making things make sense simply.
So for me, I have a spiritual background. And one of the neat things that is talked about in the Bible that says that for people who love God and are seeking after him or living after him, he works all things together for good. So that's an amazing framework to live in. Think about that.
Yeah.
Because, hey, what's your daughter's name again?
Sloan.
Hey, Sloan. This happened. This was bad. This didn't work out or whatever. You didn't win or whatever. Well, God's going to work that. What's the good? What's going to happen? And you may not see it that moment, but it might not happen for a year, 2 years, but there's a reason for it. And trusting in that, or even walking through divorce. There's worse things than divorce.
Worse things than divorce.
Right. And I told my kid, I didn't want to. I'm sure my ex didn't want to if she thought there was a way that she could work it out or whatever. But that's the place that we found ourselves. But to tell the kids, look, God's going to work this together for good in your life. And there's no question in my mind that she was called to be my wife. There's no question on those things. So God's in control. Things are going to happen. They happen for a reason. I'm not comfortable, but what's the good that's going to come out of it?
And again, when we orient ourselves to the good or the opportunity or whatever, the brain starts becoming a heat-seeking missile towards that thing.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And why would you focus on anything else?
It's amazing. I say this to myself. You ever watch that cartoon, Mr. Magoo? Oh, Magoo. It's probably way before your time. But look it up.
The name sounds familiar.
Look it up after this podcast. But this little bald-headed guy in this car, he's completely clueless. He's almost running into buildings, running over people. That's the beginning of the thing. So I almost feel like that's my life sometimes. And I pray in the morning, God, show me, let me have eyes to see all the things that you're doing and ears to hear what you want to tell me today. So to me, I'm not trying to super spiritualize things. I just think it's not by chance you and I met.
Sure, I don't believe
it's not
yet.
Yeah, I don't either. Yeah. And there's a divine reason why we met. What God's going to do with it's yet to be seen. It's a starting point right here, but it's exciting. And I think
which is where surrender comes in.
Totally. Give up. Like when I can tell people, if I go into a business deal and tell my kids, let's pray for this, but I have no will in the matter. I've got no I got no horse in the race. Yeah. They go, what do you mean? I go, yeah, I want this to happen, but I'll use the Lord's Prayer, but not my will, your will be done. Yeah. So I can rest in what are the results. If it didn't work out for a reason. If it worked out, great. It's exciting.
Well, I just posted a thing the other day. I saw it on Instagram. My assistant helped me figure out how to post it on my page too. And it was a list of all the people that were late to work on 9/11.
Wow.
Because
amazing.
One of the assistants forgot he had to get donuts for the whole people.
Right.
The other one's kid wouldn't stop crying, so they couldn't leave the house on time.
Right.
The other person got caught in traffic and forgot his shoes or what, right. This list of 10 or 20 people that didn't make it to work on 9/11
right.
because something else happened
right.
that stewarded them away from that.
So that's a very that's an amazing thing to think about, because what's the narrative? What do we tell ourselves in our mind? Like, let's say you offended me, or my child was offended by your child, and I hear the story of what happened. What's the narrative I'm putting in my mind? Well, Rocco's daughter, Sloan, must have done this, and I build this whole thing up, which could be the furthest thing from the truth, right?
Yes.
So it's very freeing to say, first of all, I got to take those thoughts captive, and love hopes the best. So I listen to the thing, but to know that even with what's happening in the world, or what I see on Facebook, there's an appointed time that you're not going to change that, but God is in control. Those people thought, I'm going to go to work on this day, but it wasn't their time to go. And so it's a recalculation, it's a resetting. And we got to live in that mindset that what we have is right now. This is the most important minute. And being present with our kids. I can remember going through the divorce and having all this stress and pressure, and somebody serving me with papers or doing these different things, and thinking to myself, my kids are talking in the car. I'm not listening to one word.
It happens, and it's the worst feeling in the world.
It's the worst feeling.
The worst feeling in
the world. And they're pouring out nuggets, and they're pouring out their heart. Yeah. And I have no clue what they just said.
Yep.
So
I think we've all been there, and it doesn't even need to be divorce you're going through. It could just be daily life.
Anything.
You could just be worried about how much shit you got to get done. Work, whatever, the laundry, and you fucking zone out, and you're just like,
Which frustrates me like I tell my kids, sometimes I'll go into a restaurant, I see a family, and everybody's got their phone out. I laugh to myself, right? And I think I even saw a podcast that you did something about that, or an Instagram post.
Yeah.
And so anyways, I take a snapshot, and I'm thinking, like, when I try to one day a week tell my kids, we're going to get together and have a meal together. Just one day a week.
Sure. Love it.
One day. Okay. And on that day, everyone put it down. You can put it down for an hour. You don't need, it's not that important. Or, I learned that, dating someone, like, okay, your kids are important, but have I told my kids tonight I'm not going to be available? If there's an emergency, I'll answer. But do you need anything right now? Do I need to get anything for you? Because I've got an appointment. I've got a business meeting. I've got this taking place. Or am I going to be constantly glued to my phone? Like today, you and I are here. I put it down. There's no distraction.
Right.
Am I giving that back to my kids?
Yeah.
Is there a time for them really to connect? Do they feel like and you can't believe, I'm sure you can, but at first, it's I call it the Thanksgiving Day, Christmas Day syndrome. Families come together. That one's got an attitude towards this one. This one fights. It's all this stress. But if you do it week in and week out, pretty soon those things go away.
Yep.
Then guess what? We're learning framework, how to communicate. Don't talk that way. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Be respectful. Be kind. Be nice. And then you're approachable. Conversations happen, and all the things that you talked about earlier in this podcast happen organically. Mm-hmm. How am I going to set up it? It's going to come out. It's going to happen naturally, and it's going to feel unbelievable.
No, I love that, and I think that's a huge thing in my house. And it's funny, Sloan called me out on it because during the holidays I moved our phone jail because we have a little box we made together for phone jail.
I saw that. Yeah, that's cool.
And I moved it, and so the phone didn't go in phone jail for like 2.5 months. She called me out on a podcast I did with her the other day.
That's awesome.
And it was cool because I'm like, you know what? We do got to get back to that. I am on my phone too much.
And you motivated me to want to do that. I'm going to get a little phone jail too.
It's awesome, and it feels so freeing. And as we record this, I haven't had all social media for 2 days now.
Wow.
I deleted the apps just because I think it's important. I tell everybody, because up to 2 years ago, I didn't have it.
Right.
Then I'm like, look, this is hard. You should take a break for your brain for a little while. Like, it's a lot of stuff.
Right.
I don't even realize I don't have it now. And it's been about 48 hours. First day, I kept like trying to swipe for the app, second, like a little bit today I was, but it doesn't even cross my mind that like, oh, I don't have this stressor, this thing in my life. And so for about 2 or 3 weeks, I'm going to just leave them. And I think I'm going to do something like that because it's kind of dad's version of phone jail.
Right.
And it's like, hey, let me take this stressor away from me for a little bit.
So, what you're really talking about is something that I told you that I did for weight loss. It's fasting.
Yeah.
So you're fasting from using the phone or fasting from that app. And those times that you do that, and when I don't eat and I'm just drinking water, the clarity of mind and I don't know if it's now God's connecting to me easier.
Yeah.
Or all these distractions are gone.
Yeah.
And you can finally just purge and just relax. It's
unbelievable opportunities have presented themselves in the last 48 hours. And I'm sure. Like, I don't think there's a coincidence.
There's no, absolutely not.
I'm like, yeah.
Pretty soon I'll have to get a hold of you by smoke signal.
Send a pigeon.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll send you a little note back.
Exactly. That would be cool.
Yeah, that would be awesome. It's funny because I'd had a conversation. I don't know if it was on this podcast or if it was at the gym with one of my friends. I was talking about when I'm a billionaire someday, like we're talking about that, I'm like, I'm going to be the guy that has like 1,000 pigeons and they'll know that's how I'm going to talk to people.
That's awesome.
I'm going to send pigeons places. And
I couldn't believe
the coolest thing.
A buddy of mine was in Iraq and he told me that's exactly how half those people were communicating.
Amazing.
It's amazing.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
You brought this kind of going back a little bit before, but it reminded me of it in the podcast and I wanted to bring it up. So again, we're always trying to steward our children and teach them and protect them and do all these things. And so Sloan roller skates and she's got the knee pads, the elbow pads, the wrist pads, the helmet.
All right, good.
Yeah. Well, the knee pads just weren't seeming to get put on last time. And I'm like, okay, do I punish her by not letting her, because we like to roller skate to the acai bowl place, get an acai, roller skate all the way back, do that. I'm like, so what do I do here? And I'm like, she claims she's not going to fall. I know she's definitely going to probably fall at least once.
Right.
I'm going to let her go. Let her go. So we went, fell on her butt. She goes, I need a pad for my butt more than I do my knees. And I'm like, okay. On the way back, very close to the house, something happens. She falls, scrapes her knee.
Wow.
Cries and's bleeding. And she's holding it. And I don't say anything. I don't say, hey, should I have your knee pads on?
How awesome is that?
Right.
I mean, that takes a real level of mature. I'm telling you.
I wanted to,
of
right?
Course.
So I'm like, I'm waiting. She calms down. She's good. We go in the house. She's like, hey, I want to put some Manuka honey and a Band-Aid on it. Cool. Manuka honey and a Band-Aid on it. I still don't say anything. And then she said something like, Dad, if you didn't whatever, I wouldn't have fell and scraped my knee. And I was like, you're right. But what could you have done that even if that happened, the knee would have still been okay? Right. She's like, the knee pads. And I'm like, yeah, but you're still responsible. You chose not to wear the knee pad. This happened.
Listen, those are awesome conversations. You're doing a phenomenal job. I want to encourage you. There's an old adage in the Bible that says a prophet's not welcome in his own hometown. That's who I feel like. My kids, if you talk to Rocco, you talk to my kids and you gave them advice, they'd be like, oh my goodness, paper and pad, that's unbelievable. I tell them like, what does he know?
I do it with my mom.
So I'm learning now and haven't mastered it, but asking questions. Hey, Sloan, is there, do you think, was there something else that maybe you could have done or just and they go, oh, I should have put the knee pads on. Now they're saying it. You already said it, but you're not telling it to them. They're saying it.
Just ask
and they drink
question.
it down and receive it.
Yeah.
So I got to learn to be better at that, but that's a phenomenal thing,
Yeah. And this, I say this probably every podcast. This is why I love doing it, because it's like free self-help book. Like it's like free, like you give me advice and I'm like, okay, log that back there. Next time something happens, don't say anything. Cause I used to always immediately correct her. Like, boom, immediately correct. Hey, if you had your knee pads on, that wouldn't have happened while she's crying. And I'm like, I'm not sure that's the right time to do that. Like,
I mean, if you can put yourself like whatever business decision or whatever, someone goes, I told you not to do that.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. So
I'm not going to receive it.
No, you're definitely not going to receive it. And, so I think it's when we can look at children as miniature versions of us and what we would like
100%
and how to be treated.
Yeah.
And she calls me out on that. She said before, like when we had this whole thing, I don't think I talked about it on here, but this whole shebang, and she called me from her mom's house and she was upset about something. And she's like, and Dad, how would you like to be treated if you were told to do all of those things at the same time? And I'm like, you got me. Wouldn't like it.
Exactly.
I'm like, so now we get to work on not doing that. And I did it the other day. I was like, baby girl, do X, Y, and Z. And she goes, Dad, we talked about not telling me to do multiple things at once. Let me do one thing at a time. I'm like, you're too smart.
Look, it's a fine line, because you might see abilities in her. No, you can multitask. That's a cop out, but you're right. You have fostered a relationship that, many people would envy. It's unbelievable. It's
Thank
great.
you.
I want to commend you.
Thank you.
And not everybody gets a trophy, but if I had one, I'd give you a trophy.
Yes. I do like to win. So.
And I'm the authority to be able to do it because I'm twice your age.
Well, thank you. It's, it's funny also, Aunt Bree, Sloan was with them and I had to go to work. They came into town, whatever, this whole thing. And so Bree was showering, like her and her daughter is like 2. And her daughter that's 2 kept saying the water's too hot. And Bree messaged me and was like, the water's not too hot. It's lukewarm. But I got scolded by your daughter because I told Emmy it's lukewarm. And Sloan goes, Aunt Bree, maybe baby Emmy actually does think it's too hot. And Bree was like, I was literally in my head like, son of a bitch.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's good. She's too smart.
It was so funny.
That's good.
All right, but we're about to wrap up in a second, but I know that I'd asked you before, I was, what's kind of, for my own personal, like what's one piece of advice that you would like to give dads, and it's humility. Is there anything else you would like to share with fathers or moms or someone going through tough times and is looking for support? Is there anything you would like to share to kind of finish it off?
Yeah. So I would say that humility is a big part of it, but God has designed you for the role that you're in. He's not going to give you more than you can handle. And at the end of the day, look around, pray that prayer. God, speak to me, give me eyes to see, ears to hear what you want to tell me, and who around me can support me. Because I tell my kids all the time, you're not going to make it through this life on your own.
Yeah.
And he's brought people as a support group around you. We need each other. I need you. Like you said, like for me, listening to you today is like therapy for me. Like, wow, I need to implement these things in my life. And I think that if we keep in that position, we're going to have a successful go at it.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for coming on, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes, of
course.
Awesome. Of course.